further proof the media isn't enlightening you. I bet you this is the only audience around that actually knows what the 12th Imam is and why it's important. And how do they hasten the return of the Promised One? The answer, chaos. And now they say that this is the year of the return of the 12th Imam. Well, I got news for you. If that's just politicians saying that, 2013's coming. You're going to look really stupid when the Mahdi doesn't come. It does not matter if you believe in the 12th Imam or the Mahdi. It doesn't matter what you believe. It matters that they might believe it. I believe they do. If the media is right and they don't believe it, well, then we had a few on-guard, freaked-out years. We learned a lot about another culture and the religious politicians in that culture. But if the media is wrong, and there is just a couple of religious zealots up at the top of these countries who have this kind of mindset, and they actually mean what they say and say what they mean, and they know, cause chaos and wash the world in blood. If the media is wrong, and you've got a couple of people that believe that, and they have access to power, then we're dead. See, the stakes of the game have gone way up in the last year. You know, Iran's not the only problem in the Middle East. As we showed you last night, radical Islamists whose main goal is to reestablish the Muslim caliphate are rising to power in Egypt, in Tunisia, into Yemen, into Libya. The violence hasn't stopped. Every single one of these countries is on the brink of becoming a full-fledged Islamic state. And on top of all of this chaos, you have billionaire globalist George Soros and his ilk throwing their weight around. And his experiences collapsing 5 economies and governments. He's now trying, and these are not my words, these are his, he is now trying to topple the biggest one of all, America. Watch.
I became concerned with the problems of globalization, where you have global markets, but you have politics based on the sovereignty of states. So how do you deal with that issue? And then I came to the realization that open society is endangered by our current leadership in this country, and that is when I refocused my attention on the United States.
Now, we exposed this week that he has a pattern that he has followed for the last 5 collapses. The first step is to form a shadow government. We have that. I mean, you can call it the czars or whatever you want, but there is a shadow government going on. Step 2, control the airwaves. They haven't quite mastered that one yet, but they're close. Step 3, destabilize the state, cause an economic crisis, or take advantage of an existing one. I believe that both of these are happening. Step 4, provoke an election crisis. You don't think that's coming? 5, stage massive demonstrations, cry voter fraud, and demand to change election results. We've already seen this tried in 2000. You don't think these things can happen? This is the way George Soros has collapsed countries before. Everything, the conditions are all right. He's busy working on these steps at Davos. He's a globalist who think that people like him should be in control, and he's not alone. This week, he likened himself to, and I kid you not, an angel. Watch, this is this week.
So I'm right now on the side of the angels. Not an easy role to play. I'm now in a sort of poacher turned gamekeeper trying to keep the system together.
Oh, not an easy role to play, one of an angel. Thank you, Mr. Potter. Obama said today at the National Prayer Breakfast that he's doing everything he's doing in office because of God.
I think to myself, if I'm willing to give something up as somebody who's been extraordinarily blessed, and give up some of the tax breaks that I enjoy, I actually think that's going to make economic sense. But for me as a Christian, it also coincides with Jesus' teaching that for unto whom much is given, much shall be required.
This is amazing to me. Yes, it is required, but it's not required that you give it to the government. It's required that you personally do it. You don't give up. Jesus wasn't talking about tax breaks, Mr. President. For the love of Pete, this drives me out of my mind. Jesus is not, I mean, you would not be a good steward. Let me ask you this. God gives you an awful lot. He's given you much. Much is required. Yes, also a brain. A brain is required to think, gee, I'm going to give it to the government, which will only give about 20 cents on every dollar to the people in need. Or I can use my brain as a good steward and give it to some place where 100 cents on every dollar. Or 80 cents, 50 cents on every dollar. It's being a good steward, Mr. President. I can't find that stuff in the Bible that he talks about unless you go to the book of Marks. This mentality is the hallmark of every progressive policy. Obama's new mortgage plan. Here's proof of how terrible and dangerous the media really is. CBS is reporting now the new Obama plan is effective, quote, because the money saved could spur the economy in other ways. And the plan shouldn't cost the government anything. Really, CBS? The President of the United States is forcing private corporations to allow homeowners an exit out of a mutually agreed upon contract that would cause the company to lose money. But the homeowner doesn't lose anything. CBS views this as a no-brainer, and I believe CBS is right, because everyone at CBS has no brain, and that's why it makes sense. Gee, if the president could just tell all the companies to give their customers their money back, or just give their products away for free, think about how much money would be floating around the economy. Did CBS even ask the question, what happens when your whole country is based on contracts? And when your contract doesn't mean anything anymore because the government says, we're not going to pay attention to those contracts. We're already living in a country where our word was our bond. A man's handshake was everything. Now that means nothing. And look where it's gotten us. Now you take contracts out, make them worthless. It may not cost the government anything, but what will the cost be to man's freedom? You're seeing it at the UN. The UN. They've just urgently decided yesterday that it's time to retool the world economy, one world government. Among their proposals, a stronger interface between science and policy. What does that mean? Quote, we must define what scientists refer to as planetary boundaries beyond which human activity could wreck the planet. So in other words, we have to have scientists, people who know more than you, to come up with these boundaries for people. Planetary boundaries equals less freedom. Somebody else is going to make a decision someplace in the world. A faceless scientist along with a faceless, non-voted into office politician. We are headed to a very dark and evil place, America.